You know, about 10 years ago, when my daughter was 11 years old, and she was in middle school, one of her classmates who was being bullied in the school hung herself, committed suicide. And my wife and I were part of the school trying to make sense of it. And the school really didn't want to talk about it. And they were afraid that if they talked about it, nobody would enroll in the school anymore. The school would shut down. And eventually, we wound up doing a workshop for teachers on how to talk to kids about their feelings, which was really very, very simple, and turned out that it was very hard for teachers when they were going to ask a child how he or she was feeling to not frame it as a why question. Like, you know, why didn't you do your homework? Why aren't you like Sally? Why do you blurt out? And we worked with them in role-playing to try to get them to drop the idea of doing why questions and just say, so what's going on? What are you feeling? You look kind of sad to me. You want to talk about it? And they were really unable to do that in the school. Teachers weren't able to do that.
John, we in LA are addressing that, and kids in 4th and 5th grade are now having a lot of interface with the dialogue and getting this dialogue of empathy and teaching that. And I know,
Right.
Dan, you had been doing a lot of that at one of the private schools or more.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on what you're saying, John, I mean, first of all, it's such a painful experience. The notion, Kirk, for you in terms of how to bring this into the classroom, when you think about all the things we've been saying, if you can let people know, for example, that learning to become emotionally literate actually reduces bullying, you could prevent a tragedy like that from happening. And part of the message, I guess, we want to get out from the Relationship Council was your issue is to provide the scientific skills, scientifically based skills that demonstrate, in fact, that kids grow within the soil of relationships. People often don't think that. Think, you know, it's the brain or it's the kid by themselves. Relationships at home, relationships in the school, that is the place in which children's minds grow. It's where their brains are formed. So if we can get that message out, then you say, well, then what are we trying to do? All the social and emotional learning skill programs, and you know, CASEL has one, casel.org. There's Mind Up, there's the Mindful Schools, there's the Garrison Institute, there's a whole set of programs. There's lots of programs out there. What we want to do is support those programs that teach these other R's, relationship skills, reflection skills, that build resilience. And so if we can get that message out there, it isn't just dyadic, although a teacher does, as Alanis is saying, you know, you have a relationship with one student, but you're handling 30 of them at once. And I just want to point out one study, the Michael Rudder 10,000 hour study shows, you know, that the leader of a school, the headmaster of a school in London, made all the difference between a school that was demoralized, not doing well, no one wanted to really try, versus a school where the headmaster could empower the teacher to then empower the students to realize that they could be differentiated, their voice mattered, as John is saying, their feelings mattered, the subjective world, the mind of the child mattered, and then the whole feeling in the school changed. And you can do that in the school you work in.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then we want to provide the science to back you up.
But there's another thing that goes with that, what John was talking about, is trying to help the teachers, and the teachers had so much difficulty, and I think this is true not only of teachers, but of therapists, and that is we can only help people as far as we have gone. And the real work, and what you're talking about, Dan, is, you know, helping to the teachers, the school, the faculty, you know, the therapists, to understand the importance of relationships, because otherwise many teachers, many therapists, many people stop at the point where they hear too much emotions. So we really have to make a change in the culture. And I think that's what you're talking about.
I'd like to mention a very successful program in Canada called Roots of Empathy. Mary Gordon.
Yeah.
A superb program, which is having a tremendous impact there, including a reduction in aggression, and reduction in out of birth, et cetera, et cetera. There is not one program I know of in this country at that level of organization.
She's introducing it.
Wait a minute.
She's bringing the program to New York.
She is.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
And there's another program that Elliot Aronson designed called the Jigsaw Classroom. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where he did not have the kids learn empathy and focus on emotions at all. He ended racism in the Austin school system by creating these jigsaw groups that relied on each other in order to learn. And it was very effective, you know, and randomized them throughout the school year at changing people's attitudes toward African American and Mexican American children, and improved the minority kids' achievement enormously. And it's been replicated in every continent in the planet. So it's Elliot Aronson, just a brilliant, brilliant scientist who did this without saying treat people nice and have feelings for them, just getting them to work together and need each other.
Yeah, you know, Michael Tomasello at the Max Planck Institute in Germany has shown a variety of ways that people do not require too much nudging really to start behaving in ways that John was just talking about. There are lots of, we're really prepackaged to share goals and to cooperate with each other. And I mean, we really 18-month-old kids watching. He does this great experiment. I'm sorry, I'm going to explain this very quickly because it's so fun. Experimenter walks into the room, grabs hold of a handle, and pulls the handle down and opens up the cabinet, pulls something out, shuts the thing, puts the handle. And an 18-month-old is watching this happen. Then the second experimenter comes in and grabs the handle and just pulls. And kids start going crazy watching this. They start going nuts. They hate this because they know you got to pull the handle down. Now that's really interesting. It seems so obvious. It's right in front of our noses. It would drive any of us crazy. But in fact, if you think for a moment about that it would drive us crazy, that's fascinating. Why should it drive us crazy? It's not my gizmo or whatever it is in the closet. I don't care about the handle. It's not important to me, but suddenly, in fact, it is important to me. So then you can ask the question, why is it important to me? And the answer, it's not a very satisfactory one, but this is what I'm going to give you right now. The reason it's so important to you is because you're human. And that's the way we're designed. You can't help it.
Well, and just to add to all of the programmatic possibilities, that the relationship councils, I think, are driving vision is that the culture does not know this stuff as a whole. That is, it's not a value system in the culture that relationships are important, and that that one of our, I think not one of, but our primary energy is to establish it as a value system in the culture, just like women's rights was established, just like civil rights was established, just like you'll die if you smoke, that somehow we have to change the cultural consciousness to understand that relationships, healthy relationships, are important. And then that means that all of the other more direct face-to-face or group situations become desirable rather than having to push against a whole wall of not so much resistance, just absence of awareness and indifference, and based upon probably the existence that has been around for 250 years at least of a focus on the self, on the individual as the primary social unit, and to see that their relationship is in fact fundamental in reality. Does that make sense about?
That does make sense, and I have one thing to add though, a problem, is that in an intimate relationship like a client